Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Money Made Simple with Oakwood Wealth Partners. My name is Nick Lockwood. I'm one of the financial planners on the team here. As always, I'm joined by my dad, Mike. Mike, how are you doing today? How's your week going?
Good morning, Nick. You shared a picture of Charlotte being scared of a daisy wheel in the water, so I thought that was pretty fun. So every time I talk to you, I got to talk about Charlotte. So
Yeah, yeah. Charlotte met for the first time a crazy daisy. For anyone who's seen those before, it's a little flower that gets hooked up to the hose, and then the water sprays through. And she wasn't totally sure if she liked it, so
she likes water.
she
She just doesn't like chasing water or
yeah,
having water chase her.
yeah, she's had an okay week. We'll try again next week. But hey, guys, today we're joined by Mike Kish. So Mike is a financial planner on the team here. We were just talking. He's been with my dad since 2010. So truly, probably the longest tenured planner with our group. Mike, why don't you just, in your own words, maybe get yourself introduced and tell everybody who you are, where you come from, and what you do for work.
Well, thank you for having me, Nick and Mike. I'm privileged and honored to be a guest this morning. I've been with Oakwood or Mike Lockwood since 2010, right out of college. And when you enter into a firm with good culture, you want to stay. So I've been loyal to Mike, and it's proven fruitful for me and for my clients. And it's just been fun ride for the last 16 years. I am born and raised in Southern California. I've been all over the place in Southern California. Finance has always been a passion of mine, and entering into the financial services industry, serving people, has become a passion of mine as well, where we're able to make meaningful impact to the lives of folks that we care about and trust us, which is an unbelievable compliment. But I'm a certified financial planner, love financial planning, uh, and I'm here in Irvine. And yeah, that's a little bit
Yeah,
about me.
Nick,
If
I
you have any
met
other questions,
Mike
let me know.
when he was a Cal State Long Beach grad. He was a surfer boy, not married, no kids. He was just free and easy. Now he's got two little boys that he's chasing around a baseball field. So I've known Mike when he was young, and now when he's a dad. And
Yeah.
it's been
Yeah.
it's been awesome being along for that ride with Mike. So.
You knew Mike back when Long Beach State had the 49ers, I think, right? As the mascot, recently
That's
switched
right.
over to the Sharks. So this is the first Shark we've had on the podcast with us. But guys, hey, today we're going to talk about Social Security. So specifically, right, everybody is hearing that the Social Security fund will be depleted in 2032, 2033, right? So this is a very topical question that we're getting a lot in the office here. So today we're going to go through Social Security, maybe some of the things that we need to know about, some of the basics. Some of this maybe you've heard, some of it maybe you haven't. Then we want to talk specifically about what does it mean if that the Social Security fund is running out? What are the possible implications of that? What are some ideas of how not we, but right, Congress fixes that? And then we just want to speak on our perspective, right? I'm 30, Mike, you're 45-ish, 40,
I'm
40s, let's just
41,
say.
Nick.
Okay. Mike's also in his 30s. Just kidding. And dad, for you, right, in your 60s, thinking about retirement coming up, Social Security historically has been a pretty important piece to the retirement picture. So that's what we're going to cover
Yeah,
today.
we invited Mike on the show for a couple of reasons. One, he's been one of my long-term planners, so he's seen quite a bit as far as questions from the Social Security. But also, we got different age perspectives. So from a personal standpoint, we might have different views on what we think Social Security about the Social Security and the future of Social Security. So. Let me give you a little bit of background as we kind of get into this. And Mike and I, so many of you know, healthcare is kind of our industry that we started with. So we used to do seminars and presentations in hospitals about Social Security and retirement planning. And we always kind of start with a little bit of history. Um, Social Security was signed into act by FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, in 1935. The actual first check didn't get cut until 1939, so they had to start funding it. But go back to 1935, if you think about it for a minute. We were just coming out of the Great Depression. We had a lot of, um, I'll call them senior workers back then that were working, and they had pensions. Some of them had pensions. Some of them didn't have pensions. Pensions were a big deal back then. Unions were a big deal back then. But some of them didn't have pensions, and if they did have pensions, they weren't paying a whole bunch. So these folks were not retiring. These people were getting around to 55, 60, 62, 65. They weren't retiring because they didn't have anything to retire to from a financial standpoint. And you got all these young nicks coming out of college looking for jobs, and there's no jobs available. And remember, we're trying to get out of a depression. We're trying to put people back to work. So FDR came up with this idea. It wasn't a new idea. I mean, it's the first Social Security system type system was in place in Germany in 1889, I think. So it was a system that was around the world, but we were trying it out in California in the United States. So this was passed in 1935. You know how much the first contribution you had to put in came out of your paycheck? You know what it was? And it was always been employer and employee, right? When you put money into Social Security, it's both employer and employee. Mike, Nick, any idea what the first contribution percentage was?
I mean, I think income tax started off
Start
at
at 1%.
1%. Yeah.
Start at 1%. So 1% of your pay came out, 1% of the workers. The most you could ever put into Social Security during any given year was, I think, $3,000. Maybe, yeah. And so there wasn't a lot of money going into it, but the first paycheck was monthly paycheck was issued to Ida May, and this is a lady that the first retiree, they got a first paycheck of $22 a month, way back in 1940, 1939, 1940. But over time, Social Security had to change. They had to adjust, okay, because people were starting to work. I had some numbers here real quick. 1937, like I said, started with 1%. 3,000 was the taxable wage base. So actually, that's right. The maximum you would put in was $30 a year into Social Security. In 1955, they bumped it up to 2%. In 1975, went to 4.95%. I started as a financial advisor in 1987. In 1990, 3 years into my career, I was a 25-year-old kid, 26-year-old kid, and they changed Social Security. Reagan was in office, and he came up with this act that he had. It was the Solvency Act. It was very clear that what they were trying to do is the Social Security Solvency Act. And they gradually increased Social Security, the age that you can take it out. They did a couple of things, right? And so now, as a 25, 26-year-old, I couldn't retire at 65. I had to wait till 67. Okay, I'm 25 years. You're telling me I can't retire at full benefit for 2 years later? Not a big deal. I'll adjust. I'll figure it out. Did it change for the people that were already retired? No. They still had the 65 age and they were still getting it. The other thing they did, which people don't realize, is they made Social Security taxable for higher wage earners. What's a higher wage earner? It's everybody in California, basically. So some parts Social Security is tax free, but they made it taxable. The other thing they did, the last thing, and then I'm gonna stop here for a minute. In 1990, is they took the 6.2, they raised it to 6.2% for each employer and employee. So now 12.4% is going into Social Security, but they increased the age, the wage amount, the maximum income that they could take it out, and it's been growing dramatically. It's more than cost of living adjustments. That's what's growing quite a bit. And so we'll talk a little bit later about some changes they need to make, but that's all the changes they made back in 1990, and that was the last thing that they ever did to Social Security. So they're overdue. They're overdue to make some adjustments.
Dan, one thing that I've heard with Social Security and its origins, and maybe this is just wrong, but what I've always heard is that Social Security was designed to kind of keep people out of poverty. Like that really was the purpose of it. So it wasn't necessarily meant to duplicate any sort of income that you had at work, but it was meant to give you something to spend, right? So you're off the streets. Do you think is that still true? Because this is the first time I've heard that the whole backstory with FDR trying to make sure that people could retire, right? Because they hadn't set anything up for themselves. Maybe they're one and the same, but that's the first I've ever heard of that. So I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, a couple things. Remember 401k plans didn't come into existence until like the early 70s. So there was a lot of time when there were people where employees weren't saving on their own. But yeah, you're right. Social Security was situated and coined as an anti-poverty
Hmm.
plan. And so that's a lot of things that Mike and I will talk about when we're talking to, clients, is that Social Security, for a lot of folks, especially in the California, the people that we deal with a lot, it's it's something we expect because we paid into it. But it's a smaller piece of our puzzle. Now, in a low income area, it's a bigger piece of the puzzle. We've got clients at both sides, where some people it's 60 to 70% of their income. Some people it's 10% of their income. So, Mike, you're seeing that too, right? I mean, Social Security means different things to different people as far as an income play.
That's absolutely right. I think for folks that are high earners and have the ability to save more in 401ks or IRAs on their own, Social Security becomes less important. Higher earners also have diversified income streams. Sometimes they'll have rental properties or inherited, properties that they can rent out. But folks that are undersaved or folks that are in areas that don't have as high of pay or earnings, Social Security becomes more important for that specific demographic. And they tend to be the ones that worry a little more about the Social Security Trust Fund and what the future might look like for that.
And there's anger involved too, right? Because we've paid into this. We deserve this. This is our money. Give us our money back. That's where a lot of folks get angry too.
Yeah, from just to kind of wrap up this point, I guess from my perspective, I think if we shift or reframe how we're thinking about Social Security away from this is money that's going to sustain me through retirement, and more so to this is money that's going to keep me out of poverty, it kind of puts some of that responsibility on us to save for our own retirement. And I don't want to get too much into that right now because I know that'll be a segment of the podcast here, but anyways, just curious about those thoughts you guys had. So let's talk then about just general rules, considerations, just to kind of lay the land of how does Social Security actually work. So, Mike, Kish, why don't you kick us off? When can we claim Social Security? When do we get our full benefit? Maybe just some of the things you think people should know as it relates to Social Security.
So Social Security was created for workers. As we talked about the origin of Social Security a little bit, it's for people who have worked in our country at least 10 years. Then they qualify for a Social Security benefit, and you can claim as early as 62. There's really an age range in which you can claim Social Security. If you're a widow, you can claim as early as 60. If you're a worker claiming on your primary benefit, it's age 62, and you can wait until age 70. You don't want to wait past 70 to claim Social Security, but that's your age range, is between age 62 and age 70. And the way that it's funded is through your when you're working. If you look at your pay stub, you'll see FICA tax deductions, old age, Social Security, little deduction right off the top of your pay. Your employer also pays, and those are FICA taxes. But that's how it's funded, and you pay into it. And then once you've accrued a benefit, then you can claim between 62 and 70. And there are certain caveats that folks should be aware of when they claim Social Security, because it's different for everybody. But that, in a nutshell, that's how it works.
Mike, I know the term earnings test gets thrown around a lot as it relates to Social Security. So I guess either one of the mics, feel free to jump in. But can you explain the earnings test and maybe the implications on if we were to claim before full retirement age and how that works?
Yeah, we often have folks coming in here and getting back to the Social Security, is it insolvent? They'll come in at 62, 64, 65 and decide they want to turn on Social Security because they're worried that they're not going to get their money, right? And they may still be working, but they want to, gosh darn it, give me my money because I'm worried that I'm not going to get it in 2032 or 2033. And we have to have a discussion, one around the insolvency of Social Security and that kind of myth. And we'll get into that a little more. But second is there's an earnings test. If you're still working and you're earning an income and you turn on your Social Security before what we call full retirement age, and everybody has a different full retirement age based on your birthday, but most folks that we talk to, it's age 67 at this point. There's an earnings test, whereas if you make more than 30, I think it's 32,000, Mike. I can't remember there, but if you make more than $32,000 in earned income, and shoot, you could do that being a greeter at Walmart, or working at Home Depot, you're going to, every $2 in Social Security you receive, you got to pay, or I'm sorry, every $2 over that earnings limit that you earn, you got to pay a dollar back to your Social Security. So basically you're giving the money back to Social Security. So there's no reason to turn it on early if you're making, $60,000-$70,000 a year. You're going to give it back. So that's the earnings test. Now, once you hit full retirement age 67 for most people, again, part of the Ronald Reagan Act that he did is he called the old age, something like Old Age Right to Work Act was part of it. And so after 67, you can earn however much you want to working, and you can turn Social Security on it and not have any of it that you have to give back. So in the old days, Mike and I, we used to talk about trying to get folks to wait till age 70 to turn Social Security on, because there's an increase. There's an automatic 8% increase per year. But because of some of the worries with Social Security, I think we've adjusted a little bit, that 70 is kind of the ultimate goal, but 67 would probably work too. Let me tell you one more thing real quick. One of the analysis that we do is what's called the break-even analysis. And it basically looks at, should you turn on at 62 or age 70, and at what age do you need to live to before it was worth your while to wait till 70? That break-even analysis was about 85, 86 years old. So if you thought you had a longer life expectancy, and who knows, but you know what your parents did, and you know how healthy you are, then you would want to wait as long as you can. But that break-even analysis assumes Social Security will never be cut. So we have to do new break-even analysis, if that makes sense, right, Mike? I mean,
Yeah. And the other thing I would say about the earnings test is if you're 62 or 65 and you retire and you think you want to turn Social Security on, give it 6 months. You might get bored. You might find something you enjoy doing and make good money doing it because you enjoy doing it. Um, a lot of people will retire, claim Social Security right away. They get bored, they want to go back to work, and then they fall into that trap that Mike was talking about, where Social Security is taking some money back when these clients look back and they didn't need that income, or they didn't need to claim that Social Security early, and it was done out of a fear-based decision because when you're in your 60s, so you see things happening. Your parents might be going, your friends might be getting sick, and you're saying, hey, I'm not going to live, or I don't have longevity, I want my money, I've been paying into it, to Mike's point earlier. So if you're before full retirement age and you're thinking about claiming Social Security, give it a few months. You might clean out the garage and you might do your gardening, and 6 months later you're like, okay, now what? So I would caution our folks on claiming early unless they know for sure that they're done. But a
yeah,
lot of
Nick,
folks will go back and consult as an example and make money too that way. So
Nick, when you retire, you can only play so much golf, right?
Yeah, I know. I'm getting ready for retirement at age 30 with the golf I'm playing. But all right, so if we were to turn on the news, right, we might see Social Security fund will be depleted by 2033. Now, I think most of us have come to know that oftentimes the headlines in the news, they're typically pretty bombastic, and while they may have some truth in the headline, right, there's a little bit more digging that we need to do to figure out what the full truth is. So you guys, what does that mean that the Social Security fund will be depleted by 2033? Does that mean Social Security is gone?
Yeah, I just read a stat. It says 32% of older adults actually understand what trust fund depletion means. So that means two-thirds of America is totally wrong with what that means. So as long as we have employees working, the trust fund will not be depleted. What's happening in 2032, 2033, if no changes are made, and this is where a president or the Congress needs to kind of step up, but if no changes are made, the surplus is depleted. The surplus is depleted. So if that happens, does your Social Security payment that you've worked your whole life for go away? No. Worst case scenario, it gets cut. And the projections are it's going to be cut by 25%. So if your Social Security benefit, let's put it in numbers, right? If your Social Security benefit is $3,000 a month, then the next year when it's cut, it doesn't go to zero. It goes to 2250. Okay, so yes, it's bad. I'm not saying it's not bad, but it's not going away. It's just that we've got to make some changes in it.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is, worst case scenario, the benefit gets cut across the board for everybody, claiming Social Security by about 22 to 25%. Changes will have to be made. I don't forecast any changes being made in this current administration because it's a political hot button. Nobody wants to touch it. A lot of the seniors in our country are the folks that vote. And, when you're talking about Social Security cuts, these folks have been planning on this income for their lives. And so where do the changes really need to happen, Nick, for you, right?
Yeah.
Like FICA can go up, the taxes that we're paying on our income can go up, the wage base can go up. Right now it's a regressive tax. They could kick the can down the road on the full retirement age or some combination thereof, but something does have to happen for these people that are on Social Security right now claiming their benefit because they have planned for it, they have worked for it. Changes need to be made. And I don't know if it's going to be made in the next 2 years, but it will have to be made at some point
Yeah,
over the
Mike,
next
Mike, to your
administration.
point, what I've read is the current president is so happy with the big beautiful bill and all the tax cuts and everything happening there. So he doesn't want to turn around and increase taxes in the middle of this big beautiful bill. So to your point, is I don't think it's going to even be touched this administration. But it probably they'll need to look at it probably with the next administration.
It's it's
Um,
it's this really
but
interesting political kind of game that's going on because Republican, Democrat, right, both want to be in office at the White House and have control of Congress, right, all those things. As we approach 2033, whoever is in power, regardless of if it's their fault or not, right, Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter. Whoever's in office, they're going to be the ones catching these headlines saying, this Democrat president is letting Social Security get cut, or this Republican president is letting Social Security get cut. So, it's kind of like it's hot potato almost, where that you want to hold the potato so that you have the power in the government, but at the same time, if you have the potato, that means that you're going to be taking heat for the inevitable Social Security changes that are going to have to come. So, Dad, sorry to cut you off there, but that was just
no, that's
something
okay.
I'm
So
thinking
so
about.
Nick, Mike, let me ask you this. A couple of years ago, probably 4 or 5 years ago, there was a lot of talk about privatizing Social Security. And whether that would work, and there was a lot of pushback on it. What does privatizing Social Security mean, Mike?
taking out of Taking the money out of the government's hands and giving it to you to invest in, kind of you're on your own. I think if Social Security becomes privatized, a lot of folks will make unprudent investments and they could get emotional about market volatility and things like that. And so, because it's a social program, people want to keep it in the government's hands because it's a paycheck. It's a paycheck that's not going to go anywhere. It's a paycheck that can only increase with cost of living adjustments. It's a tax efficient income. There's so many benefits to Social Security, but if it's privatized and put into the market, there's not going to be a similar outcome for everybody across the board. It's going to be very different for everyone. And I think that's kind of the pushback on why not to privatize.
And we haven't heard that lately. After 2008, 2009, 2022. So
I mean,
yeah.
it kind of makes sense if you think about employers, right? If you worked at GE in the 60s, 70s, or Boeing, right, you probably had a pension from work. Um, Recently, I don't know, maybe they still have pensions there, but I know more and more companies are getting rid of their defined benefit plans or their pension plans and moving more towards these defined contribution plans where the employer is giving you dollars in your 401k through a match or a 401a through a salary match, whatever it is, they're giving you money for you to invest. And now the responsibility is on you as the investor to make sure that that money lasts rather than the pension plan investing accordingly and making payments out. So the private world is already moving that direction. Now, for the big, slow federal government to move that direction too, I mean, that's just a huge mess that, your guess is as good as mine on if we'd ever get there, but it is an idea. Um, so another thing that you mentioned earlier, right? Things that they can do to maybe put Social Security in a more solid ground would be maybe push back the full retirement age, right? So rather than 67, maybe for my generation, my full retirement age is age 70. So it kind of defers the responsibility of those payments that have to come out. What other things could they do?
Well, you think about it for a minute, just to that point. When Social Security started way back in 1935, the average life expectancy for a man was 66 years old and a female 69. So full retirement age was 65. There weren't a lot of years really we were expecting to have to pay out Social Security. Well, life expectancy has gone up, right? In all these years. Now I think I wrote it down somewhere, but for a man, 76 is the age, and for a female is 81. So even at 65, at 67, you're still funding a few more years of retirement. So, to your question, Nick, what can be changed? Yes, you can push the retirement age back a little bit more. I think that's a short-term solution, and it may work. They could reduce the benefit on being paid out to people, and they've done that a little bit in the form of the new cost of living adjustments. In a couple of years ago, they had a different formula that they used for your cost of living adjustments. Now they've changed it, and it's a little bit more restrictive, so the increases aren't as much. But the biggest thing they're going to do, I really believe they're going to do this, is the higher income earners. Right now, we're capped at $186,000, right? So if you earn over $186,000, you don't pay any more into Social Security. You're done for the year until you start up January 1st again. I think what they're going to do is they're going to raise that cap, and it's probably going to go up pretty significantly. I can see that cap jumping up to 280, $300,000 a year before you're excluded from paying into Social Security. So that means that more money is going to be flowing in for a longer period of time. We've got the baby boomers and the millennials that are getting older. They're getting to their peak earning years, and so they can't afford it. And it doesn't necessarily mean your Social Security benefit's going to go up to that extent either. It's just I think it's the social attitude right now that the higher income earners should be paying more of the pie. And you know, I don't know if I disagree with that, to some extent. Yes, I know we will have pushback, and that's too big a tax, but I think in drastic times, drastic things have to happen, and I would rather, yeah, I'm going to be fine with or without Social Security. Mike's going to be fine with or without Social Security, but there's a lot of people that will not be fine if that's cut, and so they got to make some adjustments. So.
Yeah, Mike, anything to add on that? Just adjustments maybe that haven't been mentioned that you could see
Yeah,
the government putting in.
I think when you look at the history of Social Security and you look at the history of life expectancy, Social Security is meant to keep seniors from being impoverished. Seniors that are in their 80s, in their late 70s, who don't really have a skill set or the energy or the health to go back to work. And so, what are they going to rely on, right? Well, if you look at the life expectancy from then, and you look at it from now, it has drastically changed. And so, we can probably expect full retirement age to move. It has moved from 60, I believe 65, and then it was 66, and it was 66 in some months, depending on your birth date. Now it's 67. So they've slowly been changing that full retirement age, but I think we can expect that. If you're a 60-year-old couple, a male and a female, and you do not smoke cigarettes or use tobacco, you have a 50% probability or a chance that one of you lives to 93. That's a long time. That's a long time. So if you're married and you're 60 and you don't smoke and you say, okay, well, there's a flip of a coin that one of us makes it to 93, that should be taken into consideration with your personal claiming strategy for your family. But the FICA tax could also go up. The wage base that you're taxed on can go up, that Mike talked about. The full retirement age could be moved over there, or something does have to change because it's an important program, including Medicare, which is an important program for the people of this country. And I think there will be a change, definitely, in the payroll wage base, like Mike was saying, because it is a regressive tax if you look at it.
Yeah, it's going to
Yeah,
be
Mike,
really.
your point about
Yeah.
Nick, let me just kind of expound on just a quick point. Mike made a point about a 60-year-old couple, one of them living to 93. Remember, Social Security has a spousal benefit, right? So if one claims at 62 and one claims at 70, we call that the barbell approach. And one of them passes away, the survivor bumps up to the highest one. So that's what Mike's talking about as far as trying to figure out and having some strategy around your claiming. So go
Well,
ahead.
yeah, and don't let fear dictate your decisions,
That's right. That's
right?
right.
Let's use sound, analytical, non-emotional decisions when you're looking at Social Security. And remember, we're in this together. We're all in this Social Security trust together if we're all earners, right? And so everybody has a vested interest, but we shouldn't be fearful of the unknown, I don't think, when it comes to your Social Security benefit.
I'm curious to see, right? Because right now we have this big baby boomer generation that's in retirement. Eventually, that generation will pass away, and then the next generation comes up. We've seen the trends with demographics where people are having less and less kids, right? Which means less and less people paying into Social Security, but then eventually it's less and less people claiming Social Security. So it's going to be a really interesting thing to see what happens, when this baby boomer generation kind of sunsets, we move down the road of generations. The one thing that we didn't mention too, but this is kind of in line with Social Security, is these Trump accounts, right? That just came out. Remove the word Trump from the accounts. Let's just talk about the actual idea. These are accounts that the government, if you're born in the right year, so 2025 and beyond, they'll seed fund it with a little bit of money. I know there's been some, like the Dell family, right? They're going to contribute a little bit of money to these accounts. The idea, though, is that employers can contribute also to these Trump accounts for the children of their employees. This is going to be a pretty interesting concept because on one hand, you're like, well, this is more kind of um, building the expectation that people should be giving me things. But on the other hand, it's completely voluntary for these companies, if they want to contribute to these Trump accounts. And so what that means is if you're an employee and you're thinking about working at Pepsi or Coca-Cola, but Coca-Cola is going to contribute to your children's Trump account, that might be a reason to go work at a company like Coca-Cola. So it's a really, really interesting time with Social Security, but also other efforts that, the government's making to try to figure out how do we get people to and through retirement, or at
Yeah, and
least set
just a
them up.
point, Nick, that became effective July 1st of this year. So it's
Yeah.
only 2 weeks, maybe a
Right,
week old,
right,
2 weeks old
right.
at this point. So to
Yeah.
our listeners, take a look at that. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So let's then just talk here as we get close, towards the end. Dad, from a 6-year-old perspective, right? How are you in your own planning thinking about Social Security? How does that fit into your retirement plan?
Um, as a 60-year-old, Social Security, just personally, really quick, my wife has her credits. Nick's mom has her credits as a nurse. She was a nurse for several years, and then she stayed home and raise the kids. So she's got her own Social Security benefit. When she turns 62, and she doesn't work at all anymore, when she turns 62, we're going to turn her benefit on, because it's at that point it's just free money and it doesn't hurt us at all. When I get to be 67, she can claim on my benefit. So that'll give her a little bit more spending money on mine. For me, Social Security is a small part of my plan because I've saved very well. So let me kind of go back, Nick. When I was starting off as a 30-year-old kid helping people, I used to talk about the three-legged stool. Retirement should be considered a three-legged stool, and there's three legs that support that retirement plan that you have. The first leg I've always talked about is the government. The government is Social Security. But that's kind of a wobbly leg now. It didn't used to be, but now it's kind of a wobbly leg. And if anything, it's been cut, right? It's truncated a little bit. So it's not as sturdy as it used to be. The second leg was your employer. And again, this is when I was 30 years old. A lot of pension plans out there. The employers were taking care of their employees with the pension plan or a 401k match, a 403b match. So the employer was taking care of it, but it wasn't a strong leg. It was a thin leg, right? If that makes sense. Okay, they gave some, but they didn't give all. The strongest leg of that three-legged stool should always be yourself. You have to figure out how to save on your own. And, Nick, I know you started at 21 years old saving for retirement. And it just sounds silly for a 21-year-old to save for retirement. But the sooner you start that journey, even if it's just a little bit, the stronger that leg's going to be. And eventually you might be sitting on a one-legged stool but it's going to be a very thick, very strong leg because you've worked hard to save. So for me, Social Security, I'm not too worried about it for my personal income, but I am really worried about it for my clients. So it's a different perspective, right? I mean, because it's still a big deal for a lot of our employees. Mike's a 41, 42-year-old guy. So from your standpoint, Mike, how what do you think about your personal Social Security?
I'm, it's, I think my personal Social Security, some form of benefit will be there. I don't really know. I can only plan for what I do know, which is my full retirement age is age 67. I'm more than happy to pay FICA taxes onto the full wage base to get my maximum benefit because I don't think it will be going away. Changes will be made, but it won't be going away. But, Nick, you alluded to the Trump accounts, and that's the administration saying, without saying it, hey, you better start saving and stop relying on Social Security. You know, these are for newborn babies, and you think about compounding interest, and that's why it was instituted. And so if you're, 35 and below listening to this, pay yourself first before anything else. And what do I mean by that? I mean, save into retirement or save into a Roth IRA or save somewhere, but pay yourself first before you do anything else because you don't want to rely on Social Security. You want to have freedom. You want to have choice when you're later in your years.
Well,
So for me, it's a great social program. I really appreciate what it means to a lot of people, from my perspective and the privilege that we've had. And, needs to stay there for a lot of people because not everybody was blessed with the same incomes across the board or the same ability to save. So, you know, it, I can plan for myself based on what I know. And I think that it's a great program that's been put in place for members of our society.
Mike, to your point, one of my biggest pet peeves, um, you need to save early because if you don't, you become a victim, right? And you're blaming the government for why you're not doing very well, or you're blaming your employer for why you're not doing very well and successful in retirement. Don't be a victim. Start saving on your own. Take responsibility. And if you pay yourself first, to Mike's point, guess what? You spend less on other things because you don't have the money and you wait for the next paycheck. But yet you still got money set aside. And I used to get excited with my clients and we get a statement that has $25,000 in it. That's awesome. And then it's 100,000. And now it gets real exciting, but you don't get to the 25,000 or 100,000 if you don't start with $50 a paycheck to start saving. So you got to pay yourself first. So
Yeah.
don't be
Yeah,
a
I
victim.
mean, my perspective at 30, I think, it's so long before I can even claim Social Security, even if they don't move those dates back. The way I've thought about it is I'm going to pay into it, right? Because I have to, but I'm more pessimistic than Mike. I just, I'm not going to plan on it being there. It probably will be there because, like Mike said, it is a very important social, benefit, and it functions, I think, well enough, right, to keep people out of poverty and things like that. But since I have so long to go, I have plenty of time to plan, plenty of time to save, to where I don't even want it to be, part of my personal equation on whether or not I can retire. And so when I talk to people my age, I'm like, let's like you guys are saying, let's save money now, right? It might hurt a little bit. We want to go to Starbucks and Chipotle. Maybe we shouldn't. Let's put $50 a week or something into our Roth IRA, let all that money grow tax free. We can invest it however we want, and then let's look and see what happens 35 years later. You're probably going to be pretty pleased at what happened if you were able to start investing early on. So, I don't mean to avoid the question or be too pessimistic. It's 30 plus years. I see, I just maybe see the writing on the wall that the benefits are going to have to change. And so I would rather just remove myself from that. I'll still pay into it, but bring all the decision making and the agency on myself, rather than relying on the government to have that there for me.
But Nick, back to the 60-year-olds real quick. Sorry, Mike. Back to the 60-year-olds real quick. Don't, and Mike said it, don't make a decision based on emotion. I mean, don't just retirement 65, we're going to take it at 65. do a little bit of research, ask around, figure out, do some modeling on what this means from an income standpoint. And, if you've saved well, you can supplement your income. Mike and I, we always tell people when you retire, give it 6 months. This retirement thing may not stick, right? You may not like retirement. You just don't like doing the current job that you have and you want out, and I'm going to turn Social Security on. Well, just wait, and then we'll take money out of our IRAs to supplement it for 6 months while you find a job paying half the money, but now you're happy. So don't make emotional decisions. Just like we say, don't make emotional decisions about investing. Don't make emotional decisions about Social Security. Hey Nick, how's going back to our last podcast? How's SpaceX stock doing today?
Yeah, I think yeah, I'm trying to think exactly when we filmed that. It was probably right before it IPO'd. So I think as of today, it's trading around $150. It probably peaked up around $225. So I'm
So it's right
curious.
where it said it was going to be, right?
Yeah, yeah,
All the
yeah,
hype's gone now, and and everybody thought they were going to make so much money on SpaceX, and now it's a long-term play like everything else.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
All right, you
Nick,
guys. Yeah, go ahead.
Nick, I just want to say if you're a 25-year-old and you're listening to this, you're thinking, how can I save? I have student loan debt. The price of a house is $1 million. The groceries, the gas. I'm discouraged. I'm despondent, right? And then if you're a 60-year-old and you see your grandchild, or you're a 70-year-old and you see your grandchild, there are gifting strategies that you can also help them with. You can put money into accounts for their name to start that snowball, that compounding interest, right? So when the young person is really trying to get ahead and they have a negative net worth, and they're a little bit discouraged out there right now in the state of California because the cost of living, the price of everything is so high, and they're just coming out of college. But it's very important, even with all of that said, at least save as much to the match that your employer offers at a minimum at all times. And if you're a grandparent or a parent and you want to help your child, talk to somebody and look at a gifting strategy. You can give up to $19,000 per year income tax free.
Yeah,
And
Do a
you can get
matching,
into,
parent
tax
matching
deferred
fund.
accounts and creative design ideas that way. So there are ways to do it, to start early, even if you are a young person with a negative net worth.
yeah. There's all sorts of great things you can do to incentivize people to start saving young. And like you said, maybe that is a grandparent or a parent saying, "Hey, if you work hard in high school and you get a scholarship to go to college, whatever that scholarship amount is, up to gifting limits and all that kind of stuff." But point is, right, if you get a scholarship, maybe I'll seed fund your UTMA account right now, or Roth IRA, or whatever it's going to be. So, that might be an interesting conversation to have internally with families. If you're a grandparent listening to this, or a parent, maybe think about some of those ways to help some of these next generation just get up and running a little bit. So yeah, good idea, Mike.
Yeah.
All right, you guys. Well, I think we'll wrap it up here. This was another episode of the Money Made Simple podcast. Mike, thanks for taking the time to join us. This is your first one. I know it's hard to be on a podcast like this, but thought you did a great job.
I thought you
As
did good.
always, you guys, if you have questions, shoot us an email, give us a call, right? Even if it's just something real simple, we'll pick up the phone. We're here. We're happy to help. So, on that note, hope you have a
Chapter
great.
5 of my book.
What's that?
Everything about Social Security.
Yeah,
Chapter
yeah. There's a chapter about Social Security in the book. It's free on the website, so oakwoodwealthpartners.com. Have a good rest of your day, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.